Pair was staying at Fiji's ultra-private Turtle Island, where villas start at $3,500 per night.
Paradise turned into a crime scene as crystal clear waters and pristine beaches became the backdrop for a honeymoon murder. Imagine spending $3,500 per night on a luxury Fijian resort, the same location where the Blue Lagoon was filmed, only for it to become your final resting place. In July 2022, what should have been the most romantic getaway of Christe Chen's life became her last moments on Earth. While other newlyweds were creating memories to last a lifetime, Christe's husband was creating evidence that would put him behind bars for life. 3 months earlier, Christe Chen stood radiant in her wedding dress, exchanging vows with Bradley Dawson, a man she believed would be her lifelong partner. Friends watched with mixed emotions as the talented pharmacist rushed to the altar after a whirlwind romance. The wedding photos show a beaming bride, her eyes filled with hope and dreams of the future they would build together. No one could have predicted that instead of returning from their honeymoon with souvenirs and sun-kissed skin, Christe would return in an urn. Her body, beaten beyond recognition, couldn't even be transported back to her grieving parents intact. The brutal transformation from wedding bliss to funeral arrangements happened in just 5 months, from I Do in February to Gone Forever in July. This isn't just another true crime story. This is a warning about how quickly paradise can become purgatory when we ignore the warning signs. Before I continue, I want you to think. Have you ever ignored red flags in a relationship? Or watched a friend rush into commitment while silencing your concerns? Drop a comment below, sharing what relationship warning signs you think people most commonly miss. Your insight might save someone's life. Christe Chen Dawson was 36 years old when her life ended in Bungalow 15 at Turtle Island Resort in Fiji, an only child described by her father as the center of their lives. Christe had transformed herself from pastry chef to award-winning pharmaceutical scientist through dedication and hard work. Her career at Kroger Pharmacy in Memphis, Tennessee, was thriving when she met IT specialist Bradley Dawson in November 2021. Their relationship moved at lightning speed, meeting in November, married by February, and dead by July. What appeared to be a passionate romance to outsiders concealed something far more sinister beneath the surface. On July 9, 2022, just 2 days into their honeymoon, resort staff discovered Christe's body in their blood-spattered bathroom. She had suffered catastrophic blunt force trauma to her head, with injuries so severe her body required cremation in Fiji. Meanwhile, her new husband had fled the scene by kayak, taking his passport, cash, and oddly, Christe's driver's license. When captured on a nearby island, Bradley claimed her death was an accident, a defense the Fijian court would ultimately reject, sentencing him to life imprisonment with a minimum of 18 years before parole consideration. Born in 1986 to Tao and Rome Chen, Christe grew up as their treasured only child. Her parents, who would later describe her as the center of their family, devoted themselves to providing Christe with opportunities to excel. Growing up in a close-knit family, she developed a strong work ethic and passion for learning that would define her throughout her life. As a child, Christe showed early signs of the determination that would later fuel her career changes. Friends of the family recall a bright, curious girl who approached challenges with enthusiasm rather than fear. Her parents nurtured her interests, particularly her growing fascination with culinary arts that emerged during her teenage years. The Chen family's tight bond made Christe's eventual murder all the more devastating for her parents, who suddenly found themselves childless, their family's future and legacy violently stolen in a single night on a distant island. Christe's professional path reflected her multifaceted talents and relentless pursuit of growth. She began her career as a pastry chef, channeling her creativity and precision into culinary artistry. Those who worked alongside her in kitchens remembered her meticulous attention to detail and willingness to experiment, qualities that would serve her well in her future endeavors. Despite finding success in the culinary world, Christe felt called to make a more direct impact on people's health and well-being. In a bold move that surprised some but impressed many, she returned to school to study pharmacy, embracing the rigorous academic challenges that came with such a career pivot. Her dedication to her studies at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center paid off brilliantly. Not only did she complete her pharmaceutical education, but she graduated as an award-winning pharmaceutical scientist, a testament to her intellectual capabilities and work ethic. Former professors described her as exceptionally bright and committed to excellence. By the time she secured her position as a pharmacist at Kroger in Memphis, Christe had transformed herself from an artist of pastries to a healthcare professional trusted with people's medications and well-being. This remarkable career evolution demonstrated her adaptability and determination to continually reinvent herself in pursuit of meaningful work. Those who knew Christe consistently described her as warm, ambitious, and genuinely caring. Colleagues at Kroger Pharmacy recalled how she would take extra time with elderly customers, patiently explaining their medications and checking in on their well-being. Her supervisor once noted that Christe treated every patient like they were family. Friends remember her infectious laugh and willingness to help others through difficult times. She was always the first to show up with food when someone was sick or going through a rough patch, said one longtime friend. Christe believed in celebrating life's moments, big and small. Her father, in a heart-wrenching statement after her death, described Christe as my little girl and my reason for living. The void left by her absence was immeasurable to those who loved her. Perhaps most tragically, the same generous heart that made her beloved by many may have led her to overlook warning signs in her relationship with Bradley Dawson, a fatal trust in someone who ultimately didn't deserve it. In November 2021, 35-year-old Christe Chen's path crossed with Bradley Dawson, a 38-year-old IT specialist working for a Memphis-based nonprofit organization. Their initial meeting seemed unremarkable, just two professionals connecting in the bustling city of Memphis, Tennessee. At the time, Dawson was recently divorced, a detail that would later raise questions about his readiness to enter another serious relationship so quickly. Friends recalled that Christe mentioned meeting an interesting guy who works in IT, but didn't initially suggest any serious romantic interest. However, something about Dawson apparently captivated Christe, who had been focused primarily on establishing her pharmacy career after her educational achievements. Within weeks, what began as casual dating rapidly intensified, with the pair spending increasing amounts of time together during the holiday season of 2021. Little did anyone know that this seemingly ordinary meeting would set in motion a relationship that would end in tragedy less than a year later. What began as casual dating in November transformed with alarming speed. By Christmas, just weeks after meeting, Christe and Bradley were practically inseparable. Friends who had dinner with the couple in December noticed how Bradley seemed to dominate conversations and how Christe, normally independent and outspoken, often deferred to his opinions and preferences. The relationship accelerated at a pace that left Christe's inner circle struggling to keep up. Within 6 weeks of their first date, Bradley had proposed, and Christe, perhaps caught up in the intoxicating whirlwind of new love, accepted without hesitation. When she called her parents with news in early January 2022, they were stunned but supportive, wanting their only daughter to find happiness. Those close to Christe observed subtle changes in her behavior. She began canceling long-standing plans with friends, became less available for family calls, and seemed increasingly absorbed in her relationship with Bradley. One friend later told investigators that Christe had mentioned Bradley's intensity, but had framed it as passion rather than possessiveness. The couple moved in together almost immediately after the proposal, another decision that seemed rushed to outsiders. What would typically be a months-long engagement was compressed into mere weeks, with wedding plans hastily arranged for February, just 3 months after their first meeting. As wedding preparations accelerated, several of Christe's friends attempted to express their concerns. "It's not that we dislike Bradley," one close friend later explained. "We just didn't know him, and neither did Christe, not really." When one pharmacy colleague gently suggested waiting a bit longer before marriage, Christe dismissed the concern with uncharacteristic defensiveness. Another troubling pattern emerged when Bradley began accompanying Christe to social gatherings where he'd previously been absent. He would often interrupt her or correct her stories, behaviors that made her friends uncomfortable. One friend observed Bradley becoming visibly irritated when Christe received attention for her professional accomplishments. Perhaps most concerning was information that emerged only after Christe's death. Bradley's ex-girlfriend described him as very manipulative and noted his problematic behavior when drinking. Crucial information Christe likely never knew. The red flags were there, subtle but present, waving unheeded as the couple rushed toward a commitment that would ultimately lead to tragedy. On a crisp February day in 2022, Christe and Bradley exchanged vows in an intimate ceremony attended by just 20 guests. Notably absent were several of Christe's longtime friends who had expressed concerns about the relationship. Photos from the day show Christe radiant in a simple white dress, her smile wide and hopeful. The small reception was held at a local restaurant, where Bradley gave a speech describing their relationship as meant to be from the moment we met. Christe's father later recalled feeling uneasy during the toast, but pushing his concerns aside, wanting to support his daughter's happiness. The newlyweds announced their planned honeymoon to Fiji would take place in July. Turtle Island Resort stands as one of Fiji's most exclusive destinations, nestled in the pristine Yasawa archipelago. With just 14 private beaches and a limited number of luxury villas, the resort offers an intimate escape that costs approximately $3,500 per night. This paradise gained fame as the filming location for the 1980 movie The Blue Lagoon, its turquoise waters and white sand beaches embodying the ultimate romantic getaway. Each beachfront bouret, traditional Fijian bungalow, features handcrafted furnishings, personal concierge service, and direct access to private stretches of beach. The resort prides itself on ultimate privacy, with pathways designed to ensure guests rarely encounter others unless they choose to. This isolation, while perfect for honeymooners seeking intimacy, would later prove fateful for Christe, as her final moments occurred far from potential witnesses or help, with only her husband present in their secluded villa. Christe and Bradley arrived at Turtle Island in early July 2022, 5 months after their wedding. Staff later recalled the couple seemed happy upon arrival, with Christe particularly enchanted by the island's natural beauty. They were assigned to Bouret 15, a luxurious villa with panoramic ocean views and a private plunge pool. Their first day passed uneventfully, with the couple participating in a traditional Fijian welcome ceremony and enjoying a private dinner on the beach. Resort photographs captured them snorkeling and kayaking. Christe smiled bright against the backdrop of azure waters. One staff member remembered serving them breakfast on their second morning, noting that Christe seemed especially interested in local culture and had signed up for a traditional cooking class. By all outward appearances, the honeymoon began as a dream vacation. Yet beneath the surface, tensions were building. A bartender noticed the couple having a heated but hushed argument during lunch on their second day, a disagreement they quickly masked when they realized they were being observed. I need to pause here and ask, have you ever had that gut feeling that something wasn't right in a situation, but ignored it because everything looked perfect on the surface? That instinct is your brain processing subtle cues your conscious mind might miss. In Christe's case, we'll never know if she sensed danger in those final hours. If you've ever experienced that crucial moment where trusting your instincts made a difference in your safety, share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone recognize when it's time to listen to that inner voice of caution. Now, let's continue with what happened on that fateful night. On the evening of July 8, 2022, Christe and Bradley were seen at the resort's floating bar, an idyllic structure perched over the lagoon where guests gather to watch the sunset. What began as a seemingly pleasant evening quickly deteriorated. According to multiple witnesses, including 2 Australian couples and several staff members, the Dawsons had been drinking heavily since early afternoon. Around 9 p.m., a bartender observed Bradley becoming visibly agitated when Christe accepted an invitation to dance with one of the Fijian staff members during a cultural performance. Though the dance was entirely innocent, part of the resort's entertainment program, Bradley's reaction was disproportionately intense. He reportedly grabbed Christe's arm and pulled her away, muttering something that made her face flush with embarrassment. They were arguing in hushed tones, but you could feel the tension, recalled Emma Thornton, a guest from New Zealand. She kept saying, "You're overreacting, and you're embarrassing me," while he became increasingly agitated. The resort's security manager later testified that he approached the couple around 11 p.m., suggesting they return to their bouret as Bradley's voice had risen to a level disturbing other guests. The couple left the bar area together, Bradley walking several paces ahead, while Christe followed, visibly upset. The final hours of Christe Chen Dawson's life have been reconstructed through witness testimonies, security footage, and forensic evidence. After leaving the floating bar around 11:15 p.m., the couple was briefly spotted walking along the beach. Security camera footage, later crucial in the investigation, captured them taking a meandering path toward their bungalow, stopping several times during what appeared to be continued disagreement. At 11:47 p.m., they entered Blue 15. A staff member delivering turn-down service to a nearby villa reported hearing raised voices, but couldn't distinguish words. The resort's night manager confirmed that Bradley requested a bottle of champagne be delivered to their room at approximately midnight, noting that when he delivered it, Bradley appeared alone and somewhat disheveled, claiming Christe was in the shower. Between midnight and 2 a.m., no staff members had direct contact with the couple. Resort records show their room phone was used at 12:23 a.m. to call the front desk, but the call was disconnected before anyone spoke. This call would later become significant in establishing the timeline of events. Forensic analysis of the crime scene suggested that the fatal confrontation likely occurred between 12:30 and 1 a.m. Blood spatter patterns indicated that Christe had been struck first near the bed, then pursued into the bathroom where the most violent assault occurred. Glass fragments from a broken champagne bottle were found embedded in some of her wounds, suggesting it had been used as a weapon during the attack. By 1:30 a.m., security cameras captured Bradley alone, moving furtively across the resort grounds toward the beach. He was carrying a backpack and wearing different clothes than earlier in the evening. Footage shows him taking a resort kayak from the beach storage area and paddling away from the island, the beginning of his attempt to flee the scene of his crime. Mark Andrew Bresky, an Australian businessman staying in the adjacent Blue 16, provided what would become crucial testimony in the murder trial. Bresky and his wife had returned to their bungalow around midnight after the same cultural performance the Dawsons had attended. During police interviews, Bresky recalled hearing the couple return to their villa shortly after. At first it was just voices. You could tell they were arguing, but the words weren't clear through the walls, Bresky testified. Then around 12:40 a.m., there was a loud thud, like something heavy falling, followed by what I can only describe as a scream of terror. Bresky stated that the scream was distinctly female and cut off abruptly, followed by several more thuds and the sound of glass breaking. Concerned but hesitant to interfere in what he assumed was a private dispute, Bresky considered calling resort security. However, when complete silence followed for several minutes, he assumed the situation had resolved itself. "I'll never forgive myself for not making that call," he later told investigators. "I kept thinking maybe they'd just knock something over. Maybe the scream was something else. You don't want to believe you're hearing someone's last moments." Bresky also reported hearing someone leaving the neighboring Blue around 1:30 a.m., describing the sound of hurried footsteps on the wooden deck, timing that aligns perfectly with security footage of Bradley's escape. By mid-morning on July 9th, the absence of the Dawsons from scheduled activities triggered the resort's standard wellness check protocol. The couple had missed their 8 a.m. breakfast reservation and a 9:30 a.m. scuba diving excursion they had enthusiastically booked the previous day. Leilani Getaway, the guest services coordinator, attempted to reach them by phone at 10:15 a.m., but received no answer. When the couple also failed to appear for their 11 a.m. couples massage, Getaway became genuinely concerned. It was unusual for guests to miss multiple activities, especially ones requiring additional payment, she later testified. Walking past Blue 15 around noon, she noticed the "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging on the door, but also observed that the curtains remained drawn despite the spectacular ocean view, something most guests never did during daylight hours. After consulting with her manager, Getaway decided to have housekeeping conduct a discreet welfare check, a decision that would uncover the horrific truth behind the couple's absence. At approximately 12:45 p.m., housekeeper Tomasi Mai approached Blue 15 with fresh towels as a pretext for checking on the guests. After knocking repeatedly with no response, he used his master key to enter, calling out as he did so. The main room appeared in disarray: upturned furniture, a broken lamp, and what he initially thought was red wine spilled across the white bedsheets. As Mai moved further into the bungalow, the bathroom door stood partially open. What he discovered there would haunt him for years to come. Christe Chen Dawson's body lay crumpled between the toilet and bathtub, her face and torso covered in blood, one arm awkwardly positioned behind her as if she had fallen backward while trying to defend herself. There was so much blood, Mai recounted in his police statement. On the walls, the floor, even the ceiling had spatters. I knew immediately she was dead. No one could survive that much blood loss. The scene revealed extreme violence. Christe's face was nearly unrecognizable from blunt force trauma, with severe swelling around both eyes and across her mouth. Her right arm showed defensive wounds, bruises and cuts consistent with attempting to ward off blows. Most disturbing was a large gaping wound on her back positioned above several smaller incisions, later determined to have been caused by broken glass from the champagne bottle. The bathroom mirror was shattered, with blood-stained shards scattered across the marble floor. The pristine white towels had been used in what appeared to be a failed attempt to clean up some of the blood, then discarded in the shower stall. Mai immediately ran from the bungalow, alerting resort management, who initiated their emergency protocol. The resort's doctor, Dr. Carolyn Morthy, arrived within 15 minutes and officially pronounced Christe dead at the scene. Resort security secured the area, while management contacted Fijian police and the American embassy. By 2 p.m., the idyllic island had transformed into a crime scene. Police boats arrived carrying forensic teams and investigators. Guests were temporarily confined to their bungalows as authorities began interviewing staff and taking statements. Meanwhile, a resort-wide search for Bradley Dawson was underway, with a growing realization that he was nowhere on the island and that a resort kayak was missing. Dr. Avakali Mate, Fiji's chief forensic pathologist, conducted the autopsy on July 10, 2022. The examination revealed the brutal extent of violence Christe had endured in her final moments. The official cause of death was determined to be homicide by traumatic brain injury resulting from multiple blunt force impacts to the head.
When Christe Chen married Bradley Dawson 3 months after they met, her friends were concerned, with one telling People that the pharmacy school graduate's decision to marry a recently divorced Dawson was a shock because it happened so quickly. And now they're struggling to make sense of the nightmare that unfolded just 2 days into the couple's honeymoon back in July. The pair was staying at Fiji's ultra-private Turtle Island, where villas start at $3,500 per night. On the evening of July 8th, the couple reportedly got into an argument during a beach party. According to Chen family attorney Ronald Gordon, the altercation continued after they returned to their villa, and resort staff later heard loud noises coming from their suite. Gordon tells People it appears that Dawson may have visited the island before with his previous wife on their honeymoon, something Chen didn't know until that evening, which may have been the cause for the argument. The next afternoon, a maid discovered Chen's battered body in a pool of blood slumped against a cracked toilet, dead from a traumatic brain injury. By then, Dawson had fled the resort in a kayak. He was arrested 36 hours later on a nearby island where he was carrying his passport, over $1,000 in cash, and a credit card belonging to Chen. At a September 1st court hearing in Fiji, Dawson pleaded not guilty to his wife's murder. He also refused to sign a confession after receiving legal advice, but authorities insist that he had previously detailed the events surrounding that tragic night during an interview after his arrest. His attorney disputes that claim. Authorities maintain that Dawson described a violent, drunken scuffle that left Chen injured but alive shortly before he left the island. Chen's friends tell People that all of this has been really tough to swallow, and adds, quote, "Christe always wanted to be married, but I just wish she would have asked more questions about who this guy was."
The judge systematically dismantled the defense's accident theory, citing the multiple impact points, evidence of pursuit through the bungalow, and Dawson's subsequent flight as clear indicators of guilt. Sentencing occurred on February 13, 2025, when Dawson, now 41 years old, received life imprisonment with a minimum non-parole period of 18 years. The sentence represented the maximum penalty available under Fijian law for the crime of murder. During the sentencing hearing, Christe's father delivered an emotional victim impact statement, describing how losing his only child had destroyed the future of our family and left an unfillable void in their lives. Dawson declined the opportunity to address the court or offer any statement of remorse, maintaining his claim of innocence despite the verdict. In his closing remarks, Justice Hamza condemned Dawson's actions in unusually strong terms. This court views with particular revulsion not only the brutal nature of this crime, but the defendant's calculated attempt to escape justice while his wife lay dead. That you would flee rather than seek help speaks volumes about your character and culpability. 3 years after their daughter's murder, Tao and Rongchen continue to navigate a world permanently darkened by her absence. There is no moving on, only moving forward with this pain. Tao shared in a recent interview. The Chens have established a scholarship in Christe's name at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, supporting female pharmacy students who demonstrate the same dedication to healthcare that defined their daughter's career. The couple has also become reluctant advocates for domestic violence awareness, speaking at events about the importance of recognizing relationship red flags. If sharing our daughter's story saves even one life, Rome explained through tears, then perhaps some tiny meaning can be found in our unbearable loss. If this story affected you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Explosive True Crime Stories for more cases that contain crucial lessons about personal safety. Share this video with someone you care about who might benefit from understanding these warning signs.